Good afternoon and welcome back for our afternoon keynote panel, again focused on convergence in healthcare. Following on from Chris's presentation just now, I'm delighted to be welcoming together a panel of both, again, J&J as the largest healthcare company in the world who works across all these different areas, and a panel of innovators and experts who are going to guide us through the session today, looking at this cross-sector approach to some of healthcare's biggest challenges. Delighted to hand you over to our moderator, Melanie, very shortly. As I said, if you do have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A section or the chat section just to the right of where you're viewing this video, and we'll be able to get to them and ask live as we go through the presentation. So with that, I'll hand you over to our moderator for the session, Melanie Senior. Melanie, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Josh, and thank you to the panelists and to the audience. I'm Melanie. I've been covering the biopharma sector for many years, right for Nature Biotechnology and Informa, among others. It's a real delight, it's a pleasure to have this conversation today. I think we've already heard earlier this afternoon about the promise of convergence and particularly how the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the use of technology, changing how healthcare is delivered by phone in the home, and turbocharged all these different kinds of extraordinary collaborations we're seeing at many levels across the industry and beyond. And I think the economic impact of this crisis is also going to add urgency to the quest for sort of lower cost, more efficient care as well, and for lower cost and more efficient R&D likewise. So that all feeds into our panel topic, as Josh said, convergence. By convergence, which, as we discussed on the pre-call, we probably worth trying to define. It's a broad term, but we're talking about how technologies, devices, and therapeutics are starting to come together to change and improve R&D, healthcare delivery, and ultimately health outcomes, and really potentially reshaping the entire healthcare landscape in a quite a radical way. And so the panelists today all represent companies that in one way or another are embracing convergence through combining different product modalities, working with new modalities such as digital therapeutics, digital biomarkers, and or working across disciplines such as data science, AI, and alongside biomedicine and technology. So everyone's looking ahead to this world of more converged healthcare and more digital healthcare, perhaps more home-based healthcare, and that is more efficient. We've heard how investors are looking at that as well. I want to also get in this discussion onto the many challenges facing the integration of all these new tools and these approaches. We'll talk about this cultural convergence, in the words of one of our panelists, Dan, the challenges of mindset shifts that are required, as well as regulatory and particular reimbursement changes and adaptations that are needed. So with that as a little preamble, I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves briefly and to describe what their company does, and perhaps be explicit about the ways in which its approach or its programs are feeding into designing this different, more converged future, if you like, of healthcare and R&D. I'm also going to have then some questions directed at the panelists from me, but also want to encourage you in the audience to get involved, put your questions up whenever you think of them, and I'll try to integrate them as early as possible for a really, hopefully, lively discussion. So without more from me, I'm going to go first, if I may, to Jackie. Could you start, please, with the introductions? Thanks.
Okay, I'm Jackie Hunter. I'm a board director of Benevolent AI. I've been with the company for quite a few years in the executive role and recently retired from that, but still remain a board director. Benevolent is really trying to bring together, well, I don't say is really trying, has brought together data scientists, software engineers, user interface people, drug discovery, scientists, chemists, clinicians, I essentially created a company that is really using artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing to fundamentally disrupt how drug discovery and development's done. So bringing together these disparate groups, converging, if you will, the skill sets. It's not easy, and we can talk about that later. You have to invest a lot of time in really creating something that is truly doing things differently. But that's what we're doing at Benevolent.
Thank you. Can I go to Nikolai now?
Yes, thank you, Melanie. So I'm Nikolai Sorensen. I'm the CEO of Rexxar. Rexxar is a Swedish, until recently, specialty pharmaceutical company. A year ago, we were expanding into a new and very exciting area with digital health. So the way that we approach the market, and we did that even when we just had pharmaceuticals, is we're basically looking into what are some of the issues that our customers are facing. And we have been focusing a lot in the US on opioid addiction treatment. And looking into opioid addiction treatment, we're of course discussing with both patients and healthcare providers, what are some of the issues that you see? Why don't we see more patients getting access to healthcare and appropriate treatment? And when we listened to them during the last few years, we've seen that the access to psychological support is the biggest, you can say, underserved need that we see in this marketplace. Because when you are opioid addict, there are some very effective medicines out there, but that only solves the surface. If you really want to change the way that people behave, you need to go in with a psychotherapy. So we address that by looking around in the world, and we are happy to have found a German company, Gaia AG, who have been in the market for digital therapies for 20 years. And together with them, we're now bringing 3 products to the market in the US: Deprexis for depression treatment, Vadia for alcohol misuse treatment, and Modia for opioid addiction treatment. All of these are digital therapies based on cognitive behavioral therapy, where you basically complement, or in some instances even replace, the use of a psychotherapist in the treatment. So Rexxar moved from being a pure pharmaceutical company, and now we're moving into this digital health that we actually feel is a very exciting opportunity. I think it was a short introduction.
Thank you very much indeed, Nikolai. Dan, tell us about Huma.
Thanks. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone. My name is Dan Vedad, founder and CEO of Huma. At Huma, we are very excited about bringing what we used to deliver as care in the hospital settings for the secondary care required type patients to the home. And to be able to achieve that, of course, we are using technologies and applications and digital health as a whole. Now, when you do that, suddenly you're collecting data in a continuous way, because you're not bounded to periodic care you used to be able to deliver. And as a result of that, you can become a lot more proactive and predictive, because every day there are a lot of data being generated from those users and patients. And suddenly those data can be analyzed and certain predictions can be triggered. Now, this and what we do today has been, I think, a dream case and ambition of many companies and many people for many years. But it's only been in the past few years that we have had the convergence of the technology, computing power, devices, connected devices, and even mobile phones. The knowledge in medicines in ways that you can build algorithms and technologies that they can do some meaningful stuff at home without needing fancy technologies like imaging and so on, so that you can deliver. And all combined in one place actually enabled us to do what we are doing today. A good example is, during COVID alone, across our national deals, we have shipped 1 million devices that goes hand to hand with our software, which is prescribed for a specific use case. Of course, COVID would be a COVID remote patients monitoring solutions. For other diseases would be diabetes, cardiovascular, and so on. And all the data of each patient would go to the clinical team specific to them, analyze if they're deteriorating, get flagged, and then clinicians, they can either intervene virtually through telephone calls and telemedicine through the platform, or if the patient is really deteriorating, you can get the patients come back to the hospitals for inpatient care. And that's kind of like what we are doing. And in the past and what we have done today and the future, I think has only been progressing the way that we see is going to progress because of the convergence of these core technologies in the past few years.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks very much, Dan. Prabhu, last but not least.
Hi there, my name's Prabhu Velasami. I work in the external innovation function of Johnson & Johnson. Probably won't go into too much detail about Johnson & Johnson. You know about that company, but it is worth talking about, the topic of convergence and the combinations of disciplines. J&J is one of the few healthcare companies really to combine pharma, devices, and consumer at scale within a single organization. Notably, other pharma companies have actually moved away from that strategy recently. In my role in external innovation, I work with the external ecosystem to identify transformational and enabling technologies that can support our businesses. I would say that there's been an evolution in the focus. It was laser-like initially on assets, but as the markets evolved, I think it's broadened to platforms and digital therapeutics, so broader than just core offerings. And I think with the external innovation function, I think we in J&J are acutely aware that a great many of the best talent, capabilities, and ideas don't necessarily reside within our four walls. And for us, that's a critical function to be able to tap into the best science that sits outside our walls. And we have an ambition for about half our pipeline to be externally derived. And later on in this talk, I could talk about drug device combinations, digital therapeutics, and the things we're doing in that space.
Fantastic. Prabhu, thank you. I do have brimming with questions for all of you, but I'm going to be disciplined and stay according to the plan at the moment. So thank you, everyone. Wide range of things going on here, but I hope we can, bring it down to some themes. First of all, Jackie, I want to come back to you, if I may, because I can't help but, we need to bring up how this pandemic has helped further validate, if you like, benevolence approach, and particularly the role of the extraordinary help that machines can provide in making connections that human brains just can't see. Can you tell us just very briefly about baricitinib, this molecule that is already on the market as a rheumatoid arthritis drug sold by Lilly, but which your technology helped identify as potentially a very promising treatment for COVID-19, and obviously, and now months later, only months later, is in phase 3 trials, both by Lilly and other investigators.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. It's a really fabulous example of how you can use something like a biomedical knowledge graph and really be able to rapidly interrogate the information. So essentially, Peter Richardson, one of our scientists, and a couple of other people made sure the graph was enriched a little bit for what would for COVID-related information. But within 48 hours, they were able to identify not only pathways that they felt were important to inhibit viral-mediated endocytosis, which is how the virus gets into the cell. Sorry, not viral mediated, but endocytosis, which is receptor mediated endocytosis. And they hypothesized that inhibitors of a NUM kinase called AAK1 could be a really important treatment to reduce viral infection. It's already been shown that some anti-cancer agents could reverse infection via inhibition of AAK1. And when they looked at the graph, they were able to pull out over nearly 400 AAK1 inhibitors. And of these, baricitinib appeared to be the most promising. Not only was it potent such that it's a drug that's marketed for rheumatoid arthritis by Lilly, and at the doses that are given for rheumatoid arthritis, it's actually also is still a potent inhibitor of AAK1. And we published our initial paper in a letter in the Lancet, and subsequently followed up with further work really confirming the potential utility of baricitinib. We collaborated with Eli Lilly and published later on in the year that that indeed it did have the activity we predicted, and also some open label studies have been carried out, for example, in Italy and Canada, on the basis of that initial publication, and showed some very promising effects in terms of reduction in people being moved into intensive care and reduction in symptoms. And so Eli Lilly in April had already agreed with the US National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases to put a baricitinib arm into their trial, where they were adding compounds onto remdesivir. So it was a combination arm. And then in June, Lilly also announced that they were going to carry out a monotherapy trial, which has yet to report out. But excitingly, the NIAID study with remdesivir, the preliminary results were actually released in September. And in that study, over 1,000 patients in hospital were treated with either remdesivir or remdesivir plus 4 milligrams of baricitinib. And there was indeed a significant reduction in the time spent to discharge, and also at day 15, a reduction in patient symptoms. So, from our point of view, not only is that it's a great validation of our approach, but also it just shows you how, by bringing all this information together, having the right people to interrogate it, because it was asking the right questions at the first instance, but then having the technology that could give you the answers was important.
It was really important. And just briefly, Jackie, was Lilly quite open to this as soon as these early sort of computer generated results came out? Or just to get to sort of the mindset piece very briefly, did they run with it once they saw it, or was it initially?
Oh no, I mean we published it openly, but we also contacted Lilly to make them aware of what we'd found, and then their scientists went back and looked at our hypotheses and agreed that it was a good hypothesis. Did some of their own tests as well, and that's why we had the joint publication later in the year.
Fantastic. And so, yeah, I guess they would agree. I mean, it's their compound, but a really nice story, I guess, of the machines and the humans. And I want to come back on some of the other aspects of that. But thank you, Jackie. Nikolai, can I ask you, so in terms, you've described really nicely how you've brought digital therapeutics on board alongside, if you like, the traditional therapies that you have developed and sell for opioid addiction. I just wonder, can you just tell us how these, just anecdotally, how these have been received, these digital therapies? I mean, it's very different, isn't it, to receive CBT on your phone as opposed to going to see someone. And I wonder if you could briefly tell us about the attitude among physicians, primary care, to this very, still very new approach, and how well it's been working, and any sort of feedback from actual patients on how this is helping, just to give us a sense of the traction that they're getting.
So the two first products we have in the market, Boveda and Deprexis, those two are available in other markets, and in particular Deprexis have been through a multitude of clinical trials. So I think they have 13 trials that have been published in peer-reviewed journals, where they constantly show that the patients are the feedback from patients and how patients look at these tools are very positive, and often there's a lot of studies that indicate that patients are more honest to these therapies than they are when they sit in front of a counselor, which is very important in these instances. So I think from just based on that amount of data, I think we can say that the patients are quite open to it. Of course, those who enroll into such a study are those who are interested. So you have a natural selection, of course, and bias. When it comes into rolling it out into the market right now, I think the surprise to us is we don't really have to explain the value of the tools. So the majority of the physicians, the medical departments at the big health, or the medical leadership of the big healthcare providers, insurance companies, they all get it. When they look at the data we have generated, they see the need in the market, in particular due to the COVID-19 situation right now. They are very positive. I think the number one issue, and I just when I dialed into this one, I just came after my latest brief on how we're doing. The number one issue that we're running into is actually around reimbursement. So how is that reimbursement managed? And that comes from the primary care physicians, has come from the large opioid addiction clinics. It's really not a question if we are interested in using these type of tools. It's more, how do we get them reimbursed? Because then you're converging into the old bureaucratic system of how healthcare is reimbursed, pharmaceuticals are reimbursed. And for me, that's an engineering problem. So we will solve it over time, but we're not really there yet.
It's an engineering problem, not an economic problem. I mean, I know NICE has reviewed Depraxis, hasn't it? Favorably, I believe.
Yes.
And so, I mean, they see, you said, you don't have to explain the value this brings. Issue is how much they're prepared to pay for it, presumably not as much as an hour with a counsellor.
Actually, I don't. So far, that has not really been the issue. I think it's very practical terms, and it's how. So now we're only focusing on the US. So it's probably different in other markets. But in the US, you sit with the insurance companies are paying for everything, and the target for these new tools have to be people with a private health insurance.
Right.
And for them to process a claim, you need to have something as simple as a code on a piece of paper that you can say, this is the type of claim that I'm processing. And there's no place you can cross in, this is a digital therapy. It simply doesn't exist. So they need to adapt their system to these new tools. I think this is where the biggest headache is right now. And I saw one of our leading competitor, Therapeutics, came out with a press release earlier, I think it was actually this week, where they showed that the saving per month in terms of counseling that they've been able to generate is $1,600. I think that's the same price of their application for 3 months treatment. So clearly the payback is quite immediate for the healthcare system to use it. So at the moment, that's not the number one issue. The number one issue is basically how do we practically get it to use? And then of course, there are a ton of different digital health companies approaching all of these large payers in the US. And the next question is, how do we differentiate between them? What is the difference between Rexxar versus all of the other company, therapeutics, the one I just mentioned, for example? And here, there's not that there's no established process for how do we assess these different digital therapies against each other. And I think that's also something we need to develop, some of it in collaboration, some of it in competition.
Yeah, I mean, this gets into the whole, as you say, validation, standardization, data, and how it's measured and how it's assessed, and into really the regulatory side of rubber stamping these things and putting a quality mark or whatever it might be. So no, thank you for that. Frustrating, I guess, that the reimbursement's not so much the money, it's more having a code. Dan.
I would just say, I do think that we have there are some workarounds, and we are working every day, 24/7 during the week to find us to test different solutions. So I think there are workarounds, but it takes time. So
and as you say, but there's competition, which is good for, I guess, good for the providers, but makes it even a lot of moving parts. Dan, let me come to you. There's so much in here. I want to ask you about, similarly, that boring but important regulatory side here. You're talking about these new approaches to assessing people in their homes, risk assessments, digital biomarkers, as they're called, and you're obviously doing remote patient monitoring with sensors to try to kind of assess health and enable earlier, more cost-effective intervention or enable prevention. What's the challenge to you for getting these digital biomarkers, all this data you talked about that we all hear about that is now available in real time? How do we accredit that? How do we determine what is an official biomarker? I mean, it's difficult enough with clinical biomarkers. What are you doing to help drive forward a sort of acceptance of, if you have 3 or 4 days and this data and this metrics measured, therefore we agree that's risk level 1, 2, or 3, and therefore that patient needs to go into X or Y, Z treatment pathway? How do you do that?
Sure. Really valid question. I think that before I address that, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of those. And the reason we invested a lot, and some of our partners actually co-invested with us in those kind of initiative, Janssen, part of JJ, Bayer Pharmaceutical, and many other academic partners and so on, like Johns Hopkins. And the reason they are also interested is when you talk about and think about moving care from hospital settings to the home setting, suddenly you're losing some insights that otherwise you could have had through doing a lab test quickly. Let's get someone tested, via like a medical imaging systems, or simply having a doctor just like feel you. So you're gonna lose all of that. Now you have to come up with new ways that you bring back new type of insight that can be captured easily, effectively, and in a scalable way at home. And this is why we are very excited about any kind of predictive algorithms or risk scores, as we call them, or in some cases, when they do certain diagnosis and intervention suggestions, could be even a digital biomarker and digital therapeutics as a whole, which we have talked about. Now, depending to the claim, and all of these ultimately are simple algorithms, right? Something comes in, something goes out. The claim could be, this is a technology and an algorithm to just work as a decision support, right? It's not gonna do a diagnostic. For those, it's easier, and they're like this is a very like a normal standard procedures. You have to clinically validate them, publish it, and show to the world that if I can predict, okay, these patients, they have a higher likelihood of having complications in 2 weeks from now. Why? Backed with the data. And of course, we have used huge amount of data that we have access to historically, but also the data we are collecting ourselves in real time. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of patients' data that we have access to, goes back 10 years plus. So you could validate these models and ultimately publish and show to the world, okay, this is why this works. And this is a very common practice. Now, if you do diagnostic, i.e., I don't know, you put your finger on the camera and then you're telling someone you have AFib as an example, or we are working with Tencent on a technology that you use basically movement of finger to potentially be able to diagnose for Parkinson. It's a UPDRS test. For those, on top of that, you have to also file for regulatory class 2 medical device approval, both in CE in Europe, but also in FDA. And it's a little bit of a longer process. But again, the same way that you get approval for medical devices and treatment and so on, you can get approval for digital biomarkers and risk scores. Yes, of course, it takes a little bit less longer compared to some of the traditional treatments and medical devices, because these are very non-invasive. And it's quite defined now for both in the CE space and FDA space, because a number of companies, including us, we have done that, and we are doing more and more. And thanks to FDA, they have had and they have opened the accelerator pass for that, which we are also part of it. So these things can get accelerated. One of the things that we are really excited, this is for COVID, can you put your phone on your chest and pick up your respiratory rate? It's a very important vital sign for COVID-19 patients, especially when you start deteriorating. So that is something that we are working on it as an example, amongst other things that we have, of course, traditionally validated or we have approvals for.
Wow, interesting. I heard there's also a company working on whether you can detect COVID in the sound of your cough. That's the other sort of thing. So, I mean, it sounds like you're saying there is the regulatory wise, there are tailwinds. There are pathways, and you're finding for the different hierarchies of, what the device is intended to do, there is an existing path by and large in place.
Yes.
Okay, great. So Prabhu, can I come round to you, and perhaps we can tell us, at J&J, just let's stay on the regulatory theme. I mean, how have you found that? Maybe you can bring up another example of a convergent solution that you've developed, and maybe just say something about the evolution of the regulatory landscape around that sort of solution. And then I want to come on to drill into reimbursement a little bit more.
Yeah, so let me give you two examples there on the regulatory aspect. So I'm a former ophthalmologist myself, so I'm going to talk about the ophthalmology side of our business, which I understand pretty well. So when we talk about convergence, I think one thing that's very hard to do is to launch a new category of products, whether it's digital therapeutics, whether it's a drug device combo. But even for something that's probably better understood, like a drug device combination, we in J&J have started to commercialize a contact lens that elutes a drug. It's the only one that does that. It's entirely novel, but actually going through that regulatory approval process has been very challenging. And not only externally, actually convincing the regulators of the benefit, answering the questions, but also internally. When you launch a new category, such as a drug-eluting contact lens or a device, I think there's a key piece which is often underestimated, which is actually getting the senior management buy-in internally. The business model may be less proven, the ROI may be more uncertain, and it's actually quite a job to actually convince internally to actually take it external. And hopefully that'll be on the market next year. Again, I think that is one of the benefits of having an organization that looks at pharma and also looks at the devices and consumer side. I don't know many other companies that could actually launch a product like that. We've been talking a bit about digital, and there's been quite a work that's been taking place within our vision business and our retinal business on data science and descriptive predictive analytics and developing algorithms. And I think the algorithm piece is a really interesting one. So I think if you have an algorithm that is locked, you've got a data set, it analyzes it, it gives you predictions. I think the regulatory pathway there is actually fairly clear. And I would say, markets like the US are leading in that space. I think where it gets much more murky and where there's potentially much more value to be added to actually our patients is where, as you use the algorithm, it's going to potentially get more data, and you have the opportunity to improve the functioning of it, make it more intelligent as such. Now, as it gets more intelligent, the algorithm will evolve. And therefore, what you validated in your trials won't necessarily be the algorithm that is live in the markets. I still don't think the regulatory authorities have got a full handle on that. And so there have been instances where we have looked at self-evolving algorithms, but we felt that at this given moment in time, if we want to get a product to the market rapidly, the safer bet is to actually have a non-evolving algorithm, get it into the market, prove it works, and then have periodic updates, a bit like the iOS updates, version 1, version 2, version 3, but there'll be centrally driven updates strategically rather than the algorithm self-evolving.
Which completely goes against anything personalized. I mean, Dan, presumably in the digital CBT, it responds to a patient's input. So do you want to comment on, sorry, Nikolai, I'm saying Dan looking at Nikolai. That's a great point. And can you elaborate on that? The fact that perhaps the regulatory structures are sort of hamstringing, if you like, the true value of some of these technologies to be personalized and to be most effective for individuals.
Oh, absolutely, Melanie. So, it's a little difficult to see who you're looking at using this Zoom technology.
Sorry.
but I did feel your eyes are going towards me. But anyway, if you go with, I think this is one of the things that we are struggling with, at least, is so if you look at the systems that we're bringing to the market, they're built on artificial intelligence, which basically mean that if the 5 of us on this call were using Deprexis, for example, for depression treatment, now realizing that we are probably facing new lockdowns across the world, then it will be different. And after the initial day when you share a lot of the data about your situation, it will basically have a different pathway and different modules. For some people, it will be one type of modules. For others, it will be another type of modules. Basically, reacting also to when do you feel well, and then it goes back and say what kind of exercises did you do which made you feel well, and if you did feel worse, then you will go back to this. And that, of course, coming to the regulatory side, how do you do a clinical trial with something that is unique for everyone participating, and how do you, I think, even when we move ahead, as we will collect data together with our German partner, we'll collect data for all of the patients in here, and which will allow for an evolution of the program. And even though we can do a version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what kind of data do we require? And when do we need to go back to the regulators and say, hey guys, we have a new program. which actually we have tested. It is much better than we had before, but the original clinical trials are somewhat obsolete because it's not really the same program anymore. And that, I think, is of course some of the things that just needs to be evolved, but we're definitely not there. And I know of several companies who actually, just like we just heard here, are pulling back on the artificial intelligence component compared to what you could really do. You're not basically not launching your best product because you're a little afraid of how it would be received by the regulators.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And Jackie, I'm going to come back to you in a minute on some of the cultural side, but Dan, I want to go back to you. So I'm looking at you, Dan. Can you just, sorry, to just on a tangent for a minute, can you just tell the audience how at the moment where you make your money and what kind of partnerships you have and where your technologies are being used, and then perhaps you can come in as well on the sort of, you know, real-time data collection, and just elaborate a little more on to Nikolai's point about the, you know, you said regulatory side was pretty okay, but I don't know if you want to comment on that self-evolving algorithm side of things as well.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the solutions we have and our partners, kind of they're categorized in twofold. One is payer provider, which they benefit and they use our disease management tool to look after certain diseases, chronic diseases, some pre and post-op optimization of patients, remote care in a simple word. And the idea there is, as a patient with a specific disease, you get a prescription of our app, and then onward, you're being monitored and looked after remotely with the technology. And there's a clinical side on the other side, looking after you with some predictive capability into the platform. There, most of our deployment is a licensing deal based on, you know, per patient per year kind of licensing. And in some regions like the US, there's a reimbursement code. There are 3 CPT codes exactly for that, which works. And because most of the countries that we have the bigger deployment, you have governments as one of the biggest payers. So kind of sometimes it's been this combo of payer provider working together. That is the kind of the number one kind of folder. And then the second folder of the work we do is with life sciences companies. And that could be either pharma company or medical device, which our application becomes a companion or a software next to their device. Together, then they're being pushed and prescribed to the patients. So we have projects that the treatment is a drug that comes with our software. So any patient that gets that treatment will have to use our software to look after basically whether the treatment is working, whether the patient is getting better, what they should do, educational stuff, and so on. And then in the case of medical devices, especially in surgery, for any surgery that the patient is doing and needs, and they're using that specific device, ultimately the idea is the patient has to also use our app, kind of like a companion app. And that's the other, like a kind of a big use case of our platform, which in that case, either we get paid licensing or sometimes we get paid, let's say 1%, 2% cost of the treatment or that medical device. And this is the pharma partner that is paying to us. And then they will deal with the payer provider however they see fit.
After the pharma or device payer pays you and then they sort it out. Okay, so the pharma or device partner, sorry, okay.
That is correct. On the regulatory side, it is correct. If it's a evolving technology, and it doesn't even need to be, necessarily key, basically part of your solutions, could be an enabler actually for your solution. You will have a challenge. We don't have any live deployment that does and use those kind of technology. It's a tricky space. We do indeed have a project with, again, Janssen, and as a part of that, we have to use a voice-to-text engine. And as you know, most of voice-to-text engines, the best ones are always, they're learning and getting better. But unfortunately, we couldn't use that kind of technology. We had to go and partner with a partner that can give us a kind of a version which is fixed, and we're going to go with that specific version for the clinical validation and medical approval. It is a challenge, and I think it's going to stay like that. I don't think it is the end of the world, because look, if you look at the cycle of medical devices and technology, it used to get updated maybe every few years, 5 years, maybe even more sometimes, a new device getting shipped. In the world of software as a medical device, you can do that every 6 months easily, and you just file something to regulators, and I guess that is better than nothing. Of course, it's not the ideal case, and I understand that, but I think I'm personally grateful even you can do that. So
yeah, it's as you say, it's evolving. It's evolving. No, thank you for that. And it's interesting just to hear about how one of the things that has been the challenge as well, when we've been talking about beyond the pill and all that for years, is just how you make money from these add-on technologies, adherence, support. They're fantastically valuable, but then I don't know if anyone, I'd like to dig into, if we've got time, how much one is willing to pay for that, and how that evolves, as you say, as treatment patents start to be lost, etc. But before, let's park that. I want to come back to Jackie. Sorry, Nikolai, did you put your hand up just there?
No. You asked so whether people are willing to pay. I actually think that the pharmaceutical industry have a little shot the digital health industry in the foot, at least as a starter, because a lot of the pharmaceutical companies were giving away some of these quite sophisticated applications for free, and that was going with the beyond the pill concept. And now you come back and you're trying to get a price that is reflecting the value of these tools. And I think this is where part of the problems are right now. And then take one of our products, Deprexis, was promoted by Lundbeck in several years it was a giveaway. So and that of course makes it a little more difficult to go and charge a price on that today.
Gosh, that's interesting. I assume that was initially intended as an interim solution while they figured out how to monetize it, but that's a difficult challenge. I can see that. Jackie, can I come back on? So we've heard, fortunately, you're not directly up against the regulators with their aversion to self-improving algorithms and things, but tell us a little bit about mindsets and the difficulty or the challenges of having computer nerds working alongside biochemists and medics, and sort of, I guess, bringing tremendous value both, but also perhaps some clashes of philosophy in a way as well. Can you say a few words about that and how that's evolving?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really important point, because when you, first of all, I mean, when we started out and bringing together the data scientists and the drug discovery scientists, for a start, you talk the same language. Sorry, you say the same words, but you don't actually talk the same language. Benchmarking and a whole load of other things mean something completely different. Secondly, what we found was, obviously, when you start building a platform, it can be a bit clunky. It can be, there are things that go wrong, and you have to watch that your drug discovery scientists, or your domain experts, if you will, don't revert to type, in the sense that, oh, this isn't going to work, I'll just go back and do it how I did it before. The other thing you find is that, because there's a sort of inherent lack of understanding perhaps of what the technology could achieve, actually what they ask the technology to do is not what they really want, because they don't think that the technology is going to be able to give them what they really want. And really, you've got to bring people together in cross-functional teams working together, work very hard at establishing a culture where, we've embraced some of the ways of working of IT, so digital data science. So we do work in sprints and cycles and have stand-ups. We don't have scrum masters and get down into some of the weeds. We take the bits that work for us. So we're working differently as drug discovery scientists and data scientists, and learning to live with some of the ambiguity and complexity of biology, which makes it very hard to have a very black and white or
it's not model. Binary. Yes, it's not 1 or 0. It's graded. Yes.
The other thing I think that's really important is to ensure you've got these people who can straddle the two, from the sort of data science to the domain expertise, and you know, we call them product owners, but you know, they could be translators or whatever, but they can kind of be a bit of the glue to help the understanding across the different domains. And the other thing I think that's important is to really be open to doing things differently, because what you want is not just, I mean, there are some things like the vast kind of interrogation of this vast amount of biomedical data, which you can't really do, or the visualization, the way we can build a knowledge graph and visualize it to help people, to augment people's understanding. That obviously is something humans can't do. But the other thing is, there is always a temptation just to say, well, we'll get them, let's say manufacturing or whatever, we'll get the machine to do something in automation that we humans, it's very routine, and we just make them a faster human, rather than thinking about what could we really do to maximize the fact that we now have a machine doing this particular aspect. Can we think about doing it differently? Can we think about incorporating more things? I think so. I think that mindset piece is really important.
So it's not just about faster, it's about different. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, thank you. Prabhu, can I come back to you and perhaps throw in a bit of a grenade here and say, you know, J&J's been the sort of most visible converged company for years. And I'd say, you know, maybe could we have expected to see more really truly converged solutions by now? And can you perhaps talk to sort of how maybe some of the mindset, and you alluded to the sort of senior management buy-in, I mean, has that been one of the, you know, most significant breaks, if you like, on real more faster convergence, if you like, across those divisions at J&J?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that, you know, in any large organization, people are incentivized in certain ways. And when you're asked to work outside your comfort zone, if we take digital for an example, or a convergent solution, it's something where you're not sure it's going to work. The ROI is unclear or less certain than your classical product. The probability of success is lower, and it usually needs a different business model. So when you put all of that together, it's tough on two elements. One is to find who is the champion for that, because it doesn't neatly sit within any single person's role. So usually you need someone within the organization that feels it's a priority and is willing to champion that and put their reputation and B, budgets on the line. And then you need a group of people that support that individual, because in a large organization, you need to get the consensus in the group around you. And I would say that is happening at the moment. If you look within Janssen, our pharma division, you know, we absolutely see the importance of data science. We're trying to infuse data science in every one of our therapeutic areas, but it does take time. Building your own data science muscle isn't something you can do overnight. No. And as a result,
the innovation centers were for, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you want to get products and solutions to patients quickly, which is our priority, you need to partner. There are capabilities and there are data sets out there which we don't have internally. And that's why I think actually the combination between internal capabilities and external expertise in data is absolutely critical. Yeah. I would say that we are on a journey, like most pharma. I think we've made a lot of strides recently, but again, there's much more to do to get to our end state vision.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that candor, Prabhu. Nikolai, looking at you, how much resistance was there to bringing in the Gaia products, given, as you say, they'd been given away for free by Lundbeck? They're a different proposition, untested, if you like, at the time. What was that like?
I think I have the advantage of being the CEO of the company, so I'm kind of and it was kind of this is a little my baby. So and then I also have our two largest owners, the Novo Holding Group and Swedish venture capital fund HealthCap. Both of them are quite into this digital health space. So it wasn't that difficult a sell.
Okay.
I think it's more into the general, say, investor stock market, institutional investors. just say, so who are you going to? Are you going to the traditional biotechnology analysts and investors? Are you going to the tech investors? And what kind of animal are you? So you should land from being a publicly traded company. We land a little between the chairs in terms of who are we going to approach? And I think this is something that I just look at my own share price the recent weeks, where we're doing pretty well on our digital health part, moving that forward. We get punished at the second that we see some swings on the pharmaceutical side. So there's this kind of, I think we're still looked by the external investors like a pharmaceutical company. And had I not had the support by my two largest shareholders, who also represent in the board, including the chairman, of course, then we would probably have been on little the same pressures as seeing in the big pharma companies. But luckily enough, we have a backing by companies who have a longer term vision, and also understanding that this is going to take a little time.
Sure. So we're coming into the last few minutes, and there's a question from the audience. I want all of you to talk about what you think things will look like in the next 5 years, if you can. But let's start with the question to give you a bit of thinking time. To what so a question really, reiterating, to what extent COVID has brought the industry together and accelerated and encouraged this convergence, collaboration and convergence. I think we've all been saying, yes, it has. Does anyone, perhaps Dan, do you want to come in? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think it was a really interesting journey for us, especially in March, April, when it was really, the topic was very hot. We had global convergence to an extent that, as you know, we signed 4 national deals, and for all of these national deals, 2 of which are largest economies in the world, they wanted to go live really quickly. And we are talking about going live nationwide, potentially, at least be ready in matter of weeks, right? And that's not only the software, you have to make sure the data security regulations all in place, the devices are shipped. And the global convergence was, we had one of the largest airline CEO helping with the shipping. The biggest tech company in the world they had to approve our apps quicker than usually they do. They had to help there. All the partners on the ground, from the border control to hospitals to consultancy firms, that they were part of the initiatives. And of course, the technology as a whole had to converge. And it was a phenomenal time, I have to say. I have never seen anything like that in my life. And as a result of that, we went live in 2 weeks' time from the signature to the go live. But right after that, the numbers came down and everyone kind of got happy. And people were kind of went to the normal mode. And I think we started feeling, okay, the world is getting normal. People became slow. And then, of course, a lot of healthcare systems, they lost a lot of money as a part of the situation. So they were like thinking about it. But again, it's picking up. I do think the biggest impact of it will be next year, because this year everyone has been busy with firefighting, ultimately. The fundamental ones that hopefully will drive change for good, and also prepare and create a resilience in the healthcare ecosystem, so that the next pandemic comes along, we don't have the kind of situations that we had today. Hopefully it will happen next year. And I do believe we all collectively, and all the participants in this conference, we have a responsibility not to forget that. Because it is so easy to forget after a bad event hits us, and no one wants to really look back and think about it, because why would you? And if we can stay partner and collaboratively keep this memory, and then work toward having solutions that are ultimately increase the resilience of healthcare systems, the human health as a whole, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there are a lot of positive legacies that could emerge. I mean, human beings are notoriously good at forgetting bad things. So I hope you're right, Dan, that we can take some good things from this, and that frankly, that health systems don't find themselves in such financial dire straits that they simply don't dare to risk any new approaches or products, even if despite the trend of the technology here. Okay, I've got 3 minutes left, according to Josh. Can you all give me 30 seconds on a 5-year future, how converged will be? You can give a score out of 10. Prabhu.
Well, if we're 5 out of 10 now, I'd say we're 7 out of 10. I see the biggest convergence being between the application of AI to support the commercialization of existing products and new products.
Brilliant. Jackie, what do you think?
I think there's going to be a completely different set of industries, companies. 5 to 10 years, CROs will be under threat. Big pharma might be challenged by Microsoft and Google, and Amazon will be doing 3D printing and drone delivery of personalized medicines to your door.
Brilliant, thanks. Nikolai.
So I think I'm getting known for knowing that I'm betting my house that in somewhere 5 to 10 years that every visit you have with healthcare will have a digital element, and that I'm seeing coming so fast right now. I just listened to a Swedish company who saw a 300% increase in number of users in their digital interface in the primary care during the COVID crisis. So, and I think this has accelerated that. But I was willing to bet my house even before the COVID crisis that in 5 to 10 years, we will have a digital element before we meet the doctors, probably during the doctor visits, but definitely after the doctor's visit to follow up how you're progressing.
And those reimbursement codes will have moved well beyond. There'll be something else.
It's an engineering problem. If we can put people to the moon, we can solve reimbursement codes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, you've got the last word.
To be honest, if you would have asked me to predict 6 months, means today, 6 months ago, I wouldn't be able to do that. So it's really hard to predict 5 to 10 years from now. But what I can tell you, my dream would be 5 to 10 years, we have a collective of companies, no single company can do that, a collective of companies that they can empower tools like this, that tool can sit in the pocket of almost everyone's in the world, because it's something that is in the pocket of most of the people in the world. And as a result of that, you have a friend in your pocket that does continuous risk profiling of your health, continuous diagnostic, and where possible delivers continuous therapeutics in conjunctions with, of course, the traditional treatments, drugs, and so on. And if we can achieve that, this is the true proactive predictive healthcare for all. And it means all of us can be happier with bigger smiles because we are healthier and we know what's going on. And that would be my dream. And I think we can collectively achieve that dream. It's going to be tough, but we can and we should. And that would be my prediction.
Fantastic. Wow. I love that for an ending. Proactive, predictive healthcare in our pockets and all of us smiling. That would be amazing. It's quite hard to imagine, but I hope so. I hope you're right, Dan. Thank you all so much for a very vast, wide-ranging but interesting discussion. Josh, I hope I'm not too late. Handing back.
No problem at all. Yeah, I agree. It's obviously a very in-depth topic. There's so many different facets to it in so many different ways that I think we touched upon, and so many people approaching it in different ways, as we heard. So a huge thank you to all of our speakers for sort of sharing, I guess, their insights on this and on what they're doing in this space, and of course to Melanie for guiding us through the session in what's a very complex and diverse set of issues. So yeah, that's it for the, I guess, Convergence session here. We are back at 4 o'clock with our panel of industry-leading investors who are going to be sort of talking from the investment perspective, predominantly around biotech on the way they see things developing. So please do join us again at 4 o'clock. But with that, thank you all for joining us for this session, and see you again in 15 minutes. And thank you to all of our panel.